Thank you very much for generous introduction and opening this session to start. I will request all of you to please settle down because this is the last session of the day, and you will, after the end of the session, be sure that the IMA and organizers have kept this last session of the day for the best one. So this is not just an adjective which I am saying. You can see who are along with me sitting in this panel, the one who's and who from different segments of the society. Starting the theme of this session, and where we are, the main theme of the this conference is from vision to value and operationalizing strategic procurement for impact. This is the overall session where we are trying to derive the value out of this plenary session 3, and we will be talking about the policy to practice and procurement as enabler for development. To join me, we have, as introduced by the MC, we have the representative from the Asian Development Bank, we have representative from the government, and we have also representative from the auditing agency or the probating agency of the government. The public procurement sits at the intersection of 3 important imperatives. The first one is obviously the performance. If you are not able to perform, all your efforts go waste. Second one is whatever you are performing, there is a need of probity, and especially more so if you are sitting on a public procurement framework. And the end result of your every effort should bring value to public. So in this session, we will talk about these 3 important parameters: the performance, the probity, and the public value. The policy provides the framework, but practice determines whether we achieve timely delivery, cost discipline, quality with transparency, especially in today's environment of disruption, complexity, complex supply chain, and the tightened security measures. Our objective in this session is to identify the practical levers that improve procurement, from planning, market engagement, evaluation methods, contract management, governance control, capacity building, so that procurement becomes a true enabler of development rather than a bottleneck. And to begin my thought, I'll start from Ms. Padma Jaiswal, who is an IAS, and let me introduce her to you. She is an IAS officer of 2003 batch. Ms. Jaiswal has served in several key leadership roles across the government at Delhi, Goa, Arunachal Pradesh, Puducherry, and the Union government. She is currently posted as Secretary to the Government GNCT Delhi. Throughout her career, she has served as Deputy Commissioner, Director, and Secretary, overseeing the implementation of government schemes, programs, and development projects. She has also worked with statutory regulatory institutions and served with the Election Commissioner of India as a General Observer for Assembly and Lok Sabha elections. A native of Chandigarh, she completed her education in Commerce and Management. She holds an MBA degree from Punjab University. She is a University Grand Commission Research Fellow and also a qualified company secretary. That means she is best suited with such a vast educational background and vast professional experience across different states and across different departments. She is the best suited for the first question, which I'm going to ask to her, and that will be related to how the policy or the procurement related policies are being implemented in government in different wings of governments. Several Indian states remain at different stages of modernizing their public procurement systems. It is an experience which any common public can experience, whether you are interacting in one particular state and interacting in another particular state, you will feel the difference. But my question to Ms. Jaiswal will be that what would be your key message to these states on why and how they should accelerate procurement reforms? Yeah, sure. If you want, you can use the podium.
So good afternoon to everyone, and since the question is very big, the moderator asked many questions, so I thought that maybe it is the right place to stand and just address the questions, various nuances of the question that he has asked me. So I have worked in various places before my being present posting in Delhi, as in Goa and in Puducherry, and there I had held various positions in various departments. So out of that experiences which I had at the field level and at the cutting edge level regarding the procurement, the basic function in the government regarding the procurement is about guided from that GFR rules, which is issued by the finance ministry. But then as and when we hold different kind of sectors, as we get sector specific. For example, if we go to IT, when I was an IT secretary, we were not following the L1 so scrupulously, because in L1, following the L1 is a very traditional method which has been done in a very traditional fashion. But whereas when there is a scope for innovation and creativity, then we go for where there is lot of research and development is required, and when the cost, when the more value addition is required, and also when the costing of the whole life cycle of the process, applications and software is also needed, then we go for other vendors who are offering more value, who are adding more value, and who are adding more substance, and which are adding more costing to the whole life cycle of the project. So likewise, when I was in the Sanic Welfare Department, where I had various kind of interaction with this Ministry of Defence, there the procurement was taking place in the strategic sector. The procurement was bifurcated and segmented into three categories. The one category which is very repetitive and which is routine and which is indigenously available, then these local control content, that is 50% rule or less than 50% rule is followed. But otherwise, where the OEMs are not in India and the manufacturing cannot happen in India, then and the technology transfers are also not happening so frequently, then the different kind of strategies are being followed. So likewise, when we see that India spends about 15 to 20% in the procurement of the total cost of the country. So when so much of amount is being spent, and roughly around 75 lakh crore is being spent in procurement. So when such a huge amount is spent by the government in the procurement activities, which amounts to about 15 to 20% of the GDP, so it becomes very important that government also, includes the social justice and equity. And likewise, 75% of the country's GDP has been contributed by small scale and medium scale sectors. So it is the policy of the government that we should make the procurement from the GEM portal. The GEM portal is the priority which is given, and then and moreover, we have seen that the purchases over the past years in the GEM portal has increased over the time, and the MSMEs and SMEs, medium enterprises, they are also been doing we are doing the procurement for them. Now the government has also recently, in order to increase the manufacturing aspect, they have launched the Made in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat as we have to achieve the Viksit Bharat goals of 2070 or to 2047, in which we have to achieve 30 trillion economy by 2047. Now in this is also a social justice and equity objective which the government has to perform. So likewise, our procurement policy is totally guided by economic welfare and development, but at the same time a balance has to be struck that so that we can increase our domestic capability and capacity. We can increase the development of our institutions. But then, at this time, the government is, the major sector which is receiving the procurement, government is doing the procurement, is the infrastructure sector. The roads, the ships, the development of airports, ports, and the railways lines, all these transportation, because when I was in Goa, I was being associated with that freight corridor which unites Mumbai and Goa. So likewise, you know, in this particular freight corridor, we realized that we were not following the GFR guidelines very scrupulously, because it is not, most of the equipments which are not manufactured in India. So the government framework is quite flexible when it comes to strategic sector, when it comes to those sector for which the manufacturing and O&M is not happening in India, and for which the technology transfers are not happening so easily with the help of FDIs and FIIs. Now, last point which I would just like to mention here is that government is slowly moving from this L1 low cost bidding to that of the valuation, to selecting the product which is value based and which is adding some kind of, you know, life cycle pricing. Now, because government, we are not, India is not, our country is not a signatory to the global procurement agreement of WTO, on the basis of which we are going into one-to-one agreement with our member countries, like maybe G20 countries or maybe the BRIC countries. So this is just a one-to-one agreement, but the government is, the target of the government is to move from this kind of, you know, the lowest bidding to that of the value-based bidding, and also towards, we are going for the setting up of open standards in the form of global procurement agreement of WTO. So, but then this transitioning from this one aspect to the other, to toggling to the other aspect, will require a lot of capacity building and lot of capability building of our institutions, of our various kind of, you know, like agencies, and which is a slow moving process, but then we are moving towards that. So I think the discussion is still going on, and I have set the context of my experiences which I have gained. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jaiswal, for sharing your wonderful experience and the kind of projects you named, the Sagarmala, the freight corridor. They are the real infrastructure milestones of the country. They are real nation builders. You also talked a little bit about the applicability of GFR. You probably little bit cautious about commenting strongly on the L1 system. You also talked about the three kind of procurement, like repetitive or the OEM based procurements and all. Then you touched how, if the India is not signatory of the global procurement, then how India is dealing with the global issues or the global relationship in procurement related matters. And right at this stage, if I try to find an answer to this link which you left just now, I have a very right person to approach, and it's Mr. Jesper. Before I ask the question to him, it will be in the fitness of thing that I introduce Jesper from his professional portfolio. Mr. Jesper is the Director of Procurement Division within ADB's Procurement, Portfolio and Financial Management Department, the core of the bank ADB's functioning. He oversees the planning, implementation and supervision of the division's vision, strategy and work program, aligning them with the broader goals of PPFD and ADB. Jesper has been with ADB for over 16 years, having joined in December 2009 as a procurement specialist in the former central operation. He initially supported procurement operations for ADB's Southeast Asia department until 2019, after which he transitioned to leading procurement policy division across ADB. Jesper has over 24 years of experience in procurement, policy formulation, strategy development and portfolio management across sectors such as energy, transport, climate change, electoral support and IT. He holds a master degree in development and international relations and a bachelor degree in public administration from a university in Denmark. Welcome to you, Jesper, once more time. And my question to you, again, linking with where Ms. Jaiswal left, will be that, sorry, let me find. Yeah. Sorry. That from a multilateral perspective, how can procurement act as a catalyst for development impact rather than a compliance function?
Yes, thank you very much for the nice introduction and for the question, and I'm also very happy to hear Padma's comments on the challenges of using L1 only and an introduction of value-based procurement. So from our perspective, ADB's perspective, when we look at procurement, so compliance, transparency, etc. is a must. That's a non-negotiable. But it's not enough to get the right value for money that ADB is looking for. So we look at procurement as a process that can support the overall development objectives of a project. So in the procurement, we look at specifically three things in the procurement process and in the procurement function in ADB. First of all, quality infrastructure. ADB finances infrastructure projects. So we're not talking about routine or day-to-day procurement or purchasing. We're talking about infrastructure procurement. And it's about quality infrastructure. That's number one. Second is sustainability. Sustainable procurement needs to be incorporated in every procurement that ADB finances. And finally, capacity development is the third leg that our procurement function in ADB rests on. So let me start with quality infrastructure. So you, Padma, talked about IT projects where innovation is required, and therefore L1 is not necessarily the right approach in terms of the procurement evaluation method. When we look at infrastructure, whether that is metro, water treatment facilities, agricultural projects, the health sector, price is not what makes a successful infrastructure, at least not the only thing. You have to look at what kind of innovations can be incorporated, how can quality be improved of the asset that is being constructed. So, because one thing that the public sector around the globe always misunderstands is that they think that they know everything and therefore they can design the perfect infrastructure and then bid it out and then get the contractor to build it. As we heard in the last session, technology moves so fast these days. And that is in all sectors, whether it's transport, water sector, energy sector. Technology keeps developing. There is new innovations, both in terms of what can be incorporated into assets, but also how things are built. So there's a lot of innovation from the private sector that the public sector can tap into through the procurement process. And we need to do that. And that's what ADB promotes through its procurement process. So what we have introduced from 1st of January, as mentioned in the opening remarks, is merit point criteria as the evaluation method. So that looks both at the technical part, a scoring of the technical proposal from a contractor, and the price component. So of course, price still matters. Price is extremely important. But it's not to get the cheapest. It is to get the right combination of quality and price, basically value for money. And this is something this is best practice around the world in terms of major infrastructure projects. How can we tap into the private sector? And there's two sides to quality. There's quality of the asset. That is extremely important. So how can we tap into, get the latest innovations into the asset, whether that is SCADA systems or whatever it is that can be built in. but it's also the quality of the implementation. So how can we improve implementation? The biggest problem in construction contracts, that was also mentioned earlier in the day, is delays and substandard delivery of the asset. So how can we get contractors to participate and actually put the resources that are needed to build quality infrastructure into our projects? We can only do that by evaluating their proposals. How are they going to build this? What are they going to do? What is their construction methods, construction schedule? And part of that is also then incorporating sustainability. So for example, we have a couple of projects that ADB finances here in India that has carbon management as part of the contract. So the contractor has to report on the carbon footprint, both of the materials and of the energy use at site, etc. By tracking that, there's opportunities for reduce. Green cement is manufactured in India. That can be used. That's an innovation that leads to quality, not necessarily of the asset, but it lowers carbon footprints. Communities are affected when infrastructure is constructed. So roads are closed or and dug up and etc. But communities should also benefit from the construction. So how can communities be engaged, whether that is local labor, whether it's programs to upskill the labor force during the construction, so that when the construction is finished and the asset is delivered, the communities are not only getting the asset, they are also getting an upskilled labor force that can go on to get higher paid jobs in the future. So there's a lot going into quality. So it's both the quality of the asset, it's the quality of how you implement, how you build, what materials you use, but also the social, and it could be environmental, health and safety. As a friend of mine who was responsible for the expansion of ADB headquarters, when he was finished with the project and I asked what was the biggest success, and he said, nobody died during the construction. That was the biggest success. Doesn't matter if you're on time or delayed, but nobody died. Health and safety is an extremely important part. When we evaluate bids, we need to assess whether health and safety provisions are sufficient and maybe above what is the minimum requirements, and then reward that. That comes with a price tag. But by having very good contractors putting the necessary resources to implement a project, the chance of having the project implemented on time is much higher. Cost overruns are less likely. And for an asset, basically is built based on an economic analysis of the benefits of the assets. If the benefits are delayed 2, 3, 4 years because of construction delays, that economic analysis is put into question. So there is a benefit of paying more to get the asset on time and at a higher quality. The last thing that when we look at how ADB's procurement can support the development process is capacity building and capacity development. So we run a number of training sessions for our projects in terms of ADB procurement, but we're also interested, and we do this in other countries, where we work with the government on government programs in terms of capacity development within procurement. What are the best practices from around the world? What are experiences from neighboring countries or other countries in the Asia Pacific or in Latin America, Africa, where best practices comes from. So there's a lot of things that goes into getting procurement for the development. And then there's of course the assets that we finance, whether that is health centers, whether it's irrigation systems and building in the climate resilience, etc., in the design of those. So, but we look at it, procurement's first question is not what necessarily needs to be procured, but what is the development objectives of the project and of the government, and how can procurement then support those objectives? And we are strong and firm believers that when it comes to infrastructure, a value-based evaluation in terms of awarding contract is absolutely necessary to get the right quality, incorporate all of these things to get the benefits that the people need, and what is the objectives of the government. So I'm also very glad that we have the oversight representative here, because there is of course a fear in terms of not awarding contracts to L1. Because how do you defend that? And you defend that by early market engagement, talk to the industry. How can it be done? What are the industry's inputs into this, also into innovation? It is very clear bidding documents that clearly describe how this is done. And a bid evaluation report that then clearly lays out how scores has been given, so that I'm also oversight. ADB provides oversight on our projects, so that's also my role, that I can easily follow this was how the scoring was designed, and this was how it was applied, and that follows the bidding document, the rules of the game. So that is extremely important. So we really look forward to work with government institutions here in India to roll this out and achieve better procurement outcomes, and therefore also better development outcomes going forward. I'll stop there.
Very fantastic, Jesper. You talked about the 3 prime objectives which ADB, and particularly your unit in the ADB is doing, is that is the looking for the quality infrastructure procurement. The second one was about the sustainability, and the third one was capacity development. And around these 3 topics, you threw many of the highlights. And if there are newspaper agencies or the journalists who always look for the highlights, probably the Jesper's statements were all full of highlights. Some of them I will definitely like to recapitulate. But right now where you left was, you stated about the different good parts of your procurement criteria. You talked about the MPC. You talked about community engagement. You talked about the focus on zero accident or health and safety in the process. Then one of the important things which Jesper said, and I would like to repeat what he said, was if you should, your procurement should start not from the procurement process, but it should start from the developmental objective. And to meet that objective, you should look for the appropriate procurement model. And somewhere also he said that you should be ready to pay more price if you are getting delivery on time with quality. Am I right, Jesper? Yes. So I'll come back to you once again, because whatever thoughts you just now elucidated, I would like to get a comparison how India stands with the global market and how India should, in next say 10 years, should act to implement all those things. But that's for the later one. Right now I am coming to the senior most member and the most important one from government is Mr. Subramaniam. Subramaniam sir is member of Indian Audits and Account Service, a very senior bureaucrat, and the department he is heading is also very, very important one. He is Director General in Comptroller and Auditor General of India. He has over 33 years of leadership experience in audit, investigation, anti-corruption, and public financial management. He is an engineer with an MBA and MSc in Defense and Strategic Service. He is a certified internal auditor, certified information system auditor, certified fraud examiner, and IMF certified in public financial management, along with a professional diploma in public procurement. He is a domain expert in public procurement. Mr. Subramaniam has worked in supply chain management in manufacturing sector, authored a book on auditing defense procurement, and trains civil servants and public sector executives. He is currently leading a national project to reform public procurement in India and strengthen oversight mechanism. Internationally, he has conducted external audits of 10 UN agencies, including UNICEF and FAO, served as a convener of the UN Board of of Auditors, and held the role of Director of External Audit at WHO. He also has also developed the knowledge management system for the International Association of Anti-Corruption Authorities. He has held several senior positions in India, including Accountant General of JNK and Auditor General of Rajasthan, and DG Audit with Indian Air Force, auditing complex defense acquisitions. As an officer of special duty to 3 CVCs, Central Vigilance Commissioners, he played a central role in India's preparation for ratifying the UN Convention Against Corruption and initiated major procurement reforms, including establishing the Procurement Policy Division in 2011 and drafting the key international journals, key procurement manuals. He has published extensively in national and international journals. Those of you, the public officers present here, must have heard about the GFR, and then followed by the Manual of Procurements for Goods, Works and Consultancy. Their new second editions have also come for the Goods and Works. And if you want to learn who is behind those mammoth and biblical books, is the one I'm going to, I've just now introduced. So Mr. Subramaniam is here with us, and it is really a proud moment for us. And going forward, we have heard Ms. Jaiswal, where she talked about the policy implementation and procurement policies implementation in different states. Then we heard about the multilateral agency. And now the gap between the policy and practice, how one should bridge, and it can be told no other than the one who is finding such gaps in his day-to-day auditing professional service. And so the question to Mr. Subramaniam will be to please help us understand the gap between policy and practice and how can we bridge it. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. So I go here because a lot of guys are getting hidden there. So, because otherwise a lot of them, I'll miss them. Thank you very much. Thank you for the long introduction and raising the bar for me. And this is a very important question. In fact, this is the session about from policy to practice. Procurement as an enabler of development, everybody knows, having India spends 25% of its GDP. Reliance was talking about 4 crores, 4 lakh crores is only the procurement from GEM. GEM guys will know that. So with such huge, there's no doubt that public procurement is the engine for growth and development. But here I am more here to talk about policy as the enabler of public procurement, and oversight, particularly audit as an enabler, which is the new hat we are proposing to don. The whole journey from policy to practice is one of money for nothing to value for money. There is a huge gap between policy and practice. And the first example, I will start with the very misconcept of L1. Here everybody is talking about L1. Every forum I hear about L1. Everybody berating L1, blaming all the ills of the country on L1. Let's first understand correctly what is L1. Of course, there are 5-6 methods of procurement. We do not choose consciously which method to use. I'll come to it later, but first let me clarify what is L1. The technical name of L1 came in 1998 when CVC Mr. Vittal brought in. And along with it came another important principle in no negotiation regime. Many of the things which we don't practice. The real technical term for L1 is LT, least priced technically acceptable method. So from the technically acceptable, you select the least priced. You don't jump into the least priced. So there are certain things, standard items, where you cannot apply a value-based system for buying stationery, for buying a carpet. You can't, simple things in life, you can't go in for a decision scoring matrix. So L1 is the standard method world over. Of course, they don't call it L1, it is called least price technically acceptable. But the common procuring managers also understand it as you have to think of quality only when there are two envelopes. Single envelope, you don't look at quality. And now I can in this public forum speak because this is out in public domain. For 10 years we were buying tires for a fighter aircraft without looking at the quality. The RFP said the specification was it should withstand 5,000 landings and takeoff. They were buying a tire at half the price because he was the L1 without seeing that the specification of that tire is 2,500 landings and takeoff. He is giving you half the price but half the specification. But they thought this is a single envelope L1, so I don't have to look at quality, I look at only the price. So it is a misunderstanding of the whole concept of LT, least price technically acceptable. I will not use henceforth the term L1 in my talk. It is least price technically acceptable and it is suitable for certain procurements. There are 5 or 6 methods of procurement. Of course, now modern methods have come up, Swiss Challenge and various others. You will be astonished, in 2007 itself in defense acquisition, it was my report, we had recommended to the government to use a scoring matrix, value-based matrix for procuring defense capital acquisitions, aircraft, tanks, etc., which everybody opposed because they said scoring is a subjective method. So one is this big gap. Next, there are full of gaps. Nobody reads the manuals and understand. Reverse auction, I'll come to that. Everybody was talking about technology. Reverse auction, nobody has understood. The other day I was sitting with the DG DRDO, he said, when I told him this is how it is being misused and misapplied, he said, I didn't know that, I was buying a critical equipment using reverse auction. And all these gaps, now with the technology, it further accentuates these gaps. GEM. All these anomalies in public procurement, in GEM, you can, retendering is a big sin. Now we have issued an advisory. But in India, retendering is a big disease. You don't hesitate before retendering. At the drop of the hat, you retendering. Paracetamol, state medical service corporations buy paracetamol 7 or 8 times retendering. And what happens? The first bid, which comes at 50 rupees a packet, is rejected because somehow incorrect price evaluation. Last purchase price, LPP, was lower than this. Though the market price was much lower than this. Market price is higher than that. He is giving you less than the market price. So what happens? 7 times you retender, and first tender which you cancel because it was at high price for 50 rupees a packet, you end up buying at 85 rupees a packet. So again, why reverse auction is another. The manual clearly says it is not to be used for critical. You have to use only for some standard where there are 15, 16 players. All conditions is given. But people are buying. Paramilitary forces are buying tents. And the worst part is, in reverse auction, so in GEM what happens? 11 times re-tendering becomes very easy because in 1 month you can do 11 re-tenderings. Just click. So all these ills in procurement get, further elaborated in technology makes it easier, makes malpractice also easier. Now we said, and then this reverse auction, the lowest price, the lowest bid is much below your estimated price. You don't have the reason, you don't have any justification to go in for reverse auction. But since GEM, in the starting you have enabled reverse auction, so even when the price he is quoting is less than your estimated price, still you run the reverse auction. And then you cancel the whole tender saying that nobody came for reverse auction. So it's not just a gap between policy and practice, there is a whole rift valley or whatever, there's a whole, how do you bridge it? So that is a big task. You take anything, price evaluation, you read the manuals. No manual will tell you that if your price is higher or lower than the estimate, you automatically reject it. It's not a cutoff mark, admission cutoff mark, not to be used. How to do price, verify price reasonability using the estimate, everything in the manual of 2017 came because of that. Traditionally, one of the biggest gaps, policy gaps when I am talking about, all our manuals till 2009-10, when we took up this reform from CVC, 3 reforms, I'll tell you about how oversight drives reforms. The biggest problem gap in our policy or procedures was, throughout it was driven by the intention of checking corruption. The main reason for all procurement manuals, primary objective was not to facilitate, it was to check corruption. And research has shown much more money is wasted in mismanagement rather than in corruption. So now that is why after 17, when we have these 3 manuals, they are more enabling. They have come out of this, so they are more, they are not less prescriptive and more tell you the principles what to do. So I can go on and on. These are 3-4 examples I thought of the huge gap. Otherwise there is a huge, how it happens. And road sector today, many of you may be from the road sector. Highway, there is a huge crisis because 50% of the contracts are going -60, -50 below the estimated price. Broken roads, jobless. So when you underquote low price, the whole environment is driven by low cost. So low margin players survive in public procurement market. And you are squeezing the juice further out of them through e-reverse auction. So you don't have players who come with, quality players. Vaccines, 2-3 quality players, I was wondering why they don't supply to the state corporation, because their order books are filled with UNICEF and WHO orders. Why will they come into this low margin market and break their head? So how and why this gap happens, as I told you, because of lack of understanding. Big is knowledge gap. We don't have procurement managers, of course, like in international organization. Of course, let me leave you with a positive note. It does not happen only here. I have audited the UN system thoroughly, and there also the gap remains. Public procurement is such a thing. One of the UN agencies, they used matrix for evaluation, and in 80% of the cases, the program was awarded not to the guy who got the highest score. So this is I think I have said enough about this. So how do we bridge this gap? I will later, maybe I'll talk about how audit is playing this role of bridging this gap, enabling, rather than just finger pointing. We are now getting into enabling, telling that first time we are telling, why are you using open tendering when you can buy this directly? There is only one guy who can make negative pressure ambulance in India. Why are you doing this drama of opening tendering when you can straight away do single source negotiation? Another gap. The GFR as well as manuals give you 4 to 5 methods of procurement. They also give you single source selection, nomination basis. Nobody has the cheek to buy that. Nobody is able to justify single source procurement. Even when there is only one producer who can make this, they will create bring 2-3 quotations to make it look like a competition. So this is an issue. So there it is consciously about the procurement managers, and of course the fear of audit and oversight vigilance remains. So therefore we are also trying to play a positive role. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. You talked about the gaps and you talked about how to bridge the gaps. Before I go for the another round, let me summarize you the way you said how to bridge the gap, and the first one was that nobody is reading the manual. So that was what sir's suggestion. He has written and authored all those procurement methods, what are the safeguards, and if you just read those some 300 odd pages of the manual, your all queries will be answered then and there. Nothing beyond, nothing exists, I think as of now I understand, beyond those manuals. So one way of bridging the gap is...
I have a small clarification.
Yeah.
Those manuals I have not authored.
Yeah.
In fact, I initiated in 2009, February 2010. From CVC, we initiated 3 reforms.
Yeah.
One is, India does not have a nodal public procurement agency. That time the debate was whether Commerce Ministry, Finance Ministry, it was not, and DGSND, remember those days you had DGSND which was playing a nodal role in public procurement. So we said you should have a nodal agency which can regulate public procurement, we can issue manuals time to time, revise the manuals, revisit them, go on correcting, have dialogue with procurement managers. And this we modeled on the line of US Office of Public Procurement Policy, OFPP, which is directly under the Office of President, Office of Budget and Management. Yeah. So we said you have, and such a help desk you have, because when I was in vigilance, all the JS ministries, they used to ring up to me, this is where I have got stuck up, please tell. So we used to say, no, there will be a help desk there who will answer all your questions. Also take out a written directive and give it so that you can put it in your file. Second reform was that present manuals which we were having at that time. That time there was no standard manual except GFR. In fact, you will be astonished, Ordnance Factory was run on GFRs, which was very, very rudimentary. Then each PSU had its own manual, Procurement Railways had all that. So we said you should have a mother procurement manual which is more enabling, not prescriptive. Again on the line of US Federal Acquisition Regulations. And the third one, capacity building. So 3 things we recommended. It went right at the PMO level, and from there it was driven by the CAPSEC, and it got finally these manuals after a long journey. See what was started in 10 finally came in 2017. So thanks to, I think many people were there. Sanjay was there in PD. Thank you.
Department of Expenditure, yes. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the correction, sir. But as for whatever way you said it, you definitely played a key anchor role in development of those manuals. And again, my urge will be to go and read that. The first initial few clauses of that manual also talks about the applicability of manual, because whatever is written there, first check whether it is apply on your department, on your public sector or not. That is very important. That has also been clarified there. And sir talked about how the L1 system came and the no negotiation with the L1 and all those CVC guidelines. What these manuals have also done is to collated all those earlier CVC guidelines and incorporated this manual if at all they feel that they are appropriate and to be used. So nothing beyond this manual, any previous CVC guidelines regarding the topic covered in the manual will be applicable. So those L1, no negotiation with L1 and all, now goes away. You read the manual, what they are saying about it. Again, I'll come back to this, sir. Quickly, I'll come back to Jesper, and I'll ask what global procurement trend we Indian institutions should adopt to make us future ready for next few years or so.
Well, I think it was the first point I really emphasized, and that is focus much, when it comes to infrastructure, focus much more on the quality infrastructure and not so much on the initial contract price. The initial contract price, by the way, is never the final contract price. All contracts have cost escalation, etc. So the quicker a contract can be implemented, the better. So this is really, I think, key, the key trend that, and it's allowed under Indian rules as well. There's nothing that prevents, there's in some agencies a misconception that it's not allowed under Indian rules, but it is. And so there's no discrepancy between what ADB recommends and what is available within the Indian procurement framework. Another reason that I think this is an important topic and important to think seriously about how to implement in India is, we talked about the global WTO procurement rules, etc., which India doesn't subscribe to. But so I'm from Europe, so we just made a trade agreement. Very happy about that with India, and other trade agreements India is also entering into. And it's if the public procurement market in India is only focused on price and lowest price, it becomes much more difficult to compete internationally. Internationally, the trend is quality. Quality infrastructure, but also quality goods. So with new opportunities through these trade deals, Indian companies have a huge potential. And public procurement can basically support that potential by focusing also on quality in what the Indian government procures. That builds up the capacity of Indian firms to then go out and compete internationally. So there's several policy objectives that could be pursued through this by focusing more on quality, timely implementation, and sustainability. And in the EU, there will be some rules regarding carbon management before you can export by 2028, if it stays. Never know. So there's several aspects to this why, first of all, why ADB promotes it, but also why I personally think it's an opportunity here in India to really support the local market by also, through public procurement, focusing more on quality than necessarily the lowest price.
Thank you, Jesper. So, one key word which Jesper just now said was, if you really want to be competitive in international market or global market, you have to focus on quality and nothing else. So, going forward, there are many questions I have got from the audience, and most of them are focused from Subramaniam sir. So I'll try to rephrase some of them and pose a second question to Subramaniam sir, is that how can procurement system improve accountability while still enabling innovation and flexibility? Yeah.
Accountability is another most misunderstood word. Accountability, integrity, transparency. Everybody thinks this is the primary objectives of procurement. You look at 8 of these states have their Public Procurement Act. Look at their title. Transparency in Rajasthan Public Procurement, transparency in Karnataka. Who is talking about quality? Who is talking about goals? So accountability finally is accountability for outcomes. Accountability, okay, process and all is fine, but everything is designed to give you better outcome, better quality. So therefore the final yardstick, final objective of public procurement, for that matter any procurement, the objective is value for money. Value for money means buying the right quality at the right price at the right time. That's all. So the first primary objective is effectiveness. Effectiveness of outcome, effectiveness of delivery of service. It is meaningless to talk about efficiency or integrity, transparency if your outcomes are not delivered. So henceforth now audit also focus was on efficiency and use of resources, money, but we are saying first is outcome, quality. And since everybody was talking about quality, I will relate it to the gap analysis. The biggest gap is in this understanding of the concept of quality. How do you build in quality into public procurement? It is through what is called specification, or what in defense and paramilitary they call QR, qualitative requirements or specifications. This is the biggest gap. Nobody understands what are QR. People use the word technical specification and specification interchangeably. There is a difference between functional specification and technical specification. Functional specification means what is the thing, what duty or what function do you want from that thing, not how it is made. So if coastal police wants to buy a boat for patrolling, you can't waste 1 year making specification, 60-page specification, how paint is to be made, how hull is to be constructed, how the stern is to be built. You have to simply have 4 or 5 parameters, functional parameters. All the manuals as well as GFR have been crying in the first chapter itself how to make description, specification, clearly says under with bold letters, specification should be performance based, functional, should not be narrow and restrictive. You should not get into technical descriptions. It should be functional based, and that is the best way, best practice, international best practice. When you buy a thing off the shelf commercially, you make the specifications as functional, which does not happen. Because of that, how many of the defense procurements are stuck because of that. It takes 15 years to buy an aircraft. So this is one. So accountability correctly understood is accountability to the results. I know in Rajasthan we are all talking about Act. One of the provisions of the Act says, basically it was included to make the work efficient. It says after opening the bid, contract should be signed within 40 days. After 40 days it will go to the administrative secretary or the finance secretary. 40 days over, you can't, hardly anything gets done in 40 days. The secretary writes, it's now 40 days, so Act says within 40 days over, so let's cancel and retender. And this is what is happening, it's not laughable. And there is another risk to it. You go on retendering until the guy you want gets in. Retendering has a biggest risk. We all retender at the drop of that without, imagine how re-examination feels for a candidate, having to write the exam again. Similarly, a procurement manager, to get it retendered is very difficult, but we all decision makers do retendering without, thinking, and retendering breeds collusive bidding. It increases collusive bidding. So this is one gap of a correct understanding of accountability, and the accountability agencies like vigilance, audit should also focus on prudence of decision making, enabling good decision making, if a decision making is prudent. The most important is accountability when we do compliance. Now, I am teaching my guys that when you do compliance, it should be compliance to the principles, not the letter of the rule. It is the principle which is to be upheld. Because rules are in black and white, but the world is in gray. So how do you judge that? Principle is the final yardstick. So I think with this we can enforce a good accountability by understanding.
Thank you very much, sir. We have a panelist who is a very senior executive and who implements all those policies. So the next question to her is, what mechanism ensures the procurement policies translate efficiently into field level execution without dilution? Over to you, Ms. Cha.
No, actually I have two questions, and also I would like to respond to what Mr. Subramaniam has said. Actually in India, the central level, state level, and then the local level. And there are so many other statutory bodies and also the independent PSUs who are operating. So, but what I can say is there is a strategic intent on the part of Government of India to implement so many infrastructural projects, and they are being implemented also. But the thing is that there is so fragmentation in the structure of our of the whole government is that, you know, at the central level, the policies are working in a very coordinated manner, whereas at the state level they are having their own unique, different, stratified, segmented policies. Now, depending upon situational, which are very situational oriented also, and at the local level, as Mr. Subramaniam was saying, that they are re-tendering again and again. Now, this happens with the small budget projects. Now, which happens and they again amount to re-tendering. But this cannot be, I think this cannot be done at the level of central government, you know, bigger projects, because they are being monitored at Gati Shakti level, and maybe some of the projects which are having a very big outlay, they are monitored by the Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister himself in his Pragati scheme and program. So, so therefore, what I can say that I will just count out from my experience which I had in Goa, where we implemented Sagarmala, Bharatmala, that freight corridor, the MOPA Phase 2 airport program, and also we implemented the solar programs. Now, out of these, what we did was that, as Mr. Subramaniam was saying, that we engaged this PricewaterhouseCoopers. Now, what they did was they developed various metrics. Now, if we develop various metrics and we are measuring the outcomes and we are, you know, measuring the performances, then maybe with the hindrances and whatever the limitations that hinder our further movement of the progress in terms of L1 or other kind of characteristics takes a back seat. Because the performance-oriented measurement is really the key and which holds the ground. Now, at this point in time in the projects, all the projects in Goa, they are fully implemented and they are up and running, and they have already been given to the operational, you know, holder for taking out the revenue, and the revenue is being coming to the government out of that. So it is about developing various metrics so that you can measure your performance, and on the basis of, if your measurement of the performance is on the basic tangible metrics, then it is not very difficult, you know, to do the procurement or to take the projects ahead. And India is a very viable example at this point in time, where we are investing maximum procurement in the infrastructure projects, in the transportation projects, in the freight corridors, in the ports, in the airports. So procurement policies have to be tweaked as per the performance oriented goals, and L1 has been, you know, only done for some kind of repetitive nature of work, and for which the SMEs and MSMEs are the real suppliers. Now, I would also like to add one last point here, is that like, you know, we are having the strategic sectors, and also we are moving towards the global procurement agency of the WTO agreement. Now, under this particular thing, we are having a agreement with the BRICS nation and with the G20 nations, and whatever the procurement we are doing on the global procurement basis, which are totally dependent on the open segments, the open standards and frameworks and conventions. Now, we have to do it, because if we have to go and achieve the Viksit Bharat goals, how we can do it? We have to go for the strategic procurement of these assets. Now, but one thing which I would like to comment on, Mr. Jesper, is that India is a price sensitive nation. So when it comes to quality and sustainability, price is also one of the variables which cannot be ignored. So we have to come out with some kind of frugal innovation and some kind of more creativity. So, and I think for these days we are utilizing the data analytics and artificial intelligence in the GEM portal purchases also, where out of maybe the image of the vendor and the reputation and the goodwill which has been earned by the vendor is totally projected there. and we can rate and we can outline and we can assess and we can evaluate on the basis on which the qualitative things will be, given to the project. So likewise, we are leveraging data analytics and AI in the GEM portal and all the other things. But at the same time, both the things are going parallelly side by side. Otherwise, this such large scale investment in infrastructure wouldn't have been possible.